All right, and we're back with The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Part 2. And so, continue on from the previous video on Jurassic Park, the first movie. As I said, it really holds up as you do have this for the time, it was a very an amazing combination between the reality of actually seeing dinosaurs, and then you have the score by John Williams, and you have this kind of like this magnificence on screen, which wasn't there. I mean, you had Star Wars, for example, but once you see the techniques that were employed to actually bring the dinosaurs to life, as a combination between computers and then using not green screen, but having the actual actors in scene. And you might say, well, computers today, even a common laptop can do more than that. But consider that at that time, you didn't have smartphones, you didn't have these devices that were as powerful. I mean, for today's standards, you can buy a low tier cell phone for less than $100, and it has a more capacity than computers back then. So it was a great feat in and of itself. And so Steven Spielberg did something great with this. Now, going into Jurassic Park Part 2, The Lost World, this is where we start coming away of stepping back on kind of that magnificence of the dinosaurs brought back to life and everything else, like this new world. So what we start to see now is actually the backstory. And so by this I mean that you have, if you remember, there was a facility in Jurassic Park. And when we see how the dinosaurs are being created, they're kind of extracting the DNA from wherever they can. And that includes even from mosquitoes who had fed on that blood, but were trapped in amber or this other substance. They were fossilized, but because they were preserved, supposedly, that's where they were able to grab a sample and actually work with it to create these new dinosaurs. Well, that and plus they combine it with frogs DNA so that they can really be brought back to life, and then they're all female. And okay, well, another thing I should add is that they were also genetically modified so that they can't really produce their own amino acid, a component to make very important proteins called lysine. And so that means that they were dependent, the dinosaurs were dependent of getting this supplementation from elsewhere, from them directly, from scientists, from actual park. So that's kind of like a way of making sure of getting the dinosaurs under control. Now, what we see here is that after what happened in Isla Nubar, um, everybody kind of forgot about that, but also because the park, the funds had to come from somewhere. And so, well, obviously, the millionaire who had kind of created or, given this opportunity to take place to build the park, get the island, get the dinosaurs, and all this. Well, now we look at this. The corporation itself is called InGen. And InGen is, well, how can I say it? How can I describe it? InGen is this corporation, this major corporation, and as the name would imply, they're kind of dealing with a lot of genetic manipulation. So, with the events that happened in the park, in the first one, Isla Nubar, well, they kind of buried the story and kind of shocked off the deaths and everything that happened as no, and nothing really happened. And they kind of bought the silence from from Ian Malcolm, from Dr. Grant, from the other doctor. I mean, they bought everybody's silence with money, and this left Ian Malcolm, that kind of like suave kind of guy. It left him with a very bitter taste in his mouth. Why? Because people died. Things happened. You can't just ignore it. You can't just buy it out. You can't just buy silence. Well, yes, they can, and they did. Because of this, even though he had signed a non-disclosure agreement that he wouldn't say anything that he saw in the park, well, he kind of did. He broke the agreement, but only because he saw what the corporation was doing and he wasn't happy. Not at all. So he insisted on kind of divulging this to the world. And, well, it didn't go great for him. He lost his job, he lost his reputation. And so, what we see in the beginning of the movie is that we follow Malcolm, Ian Malcolm, Dr. Malcolm. We follow him and we see that the aftermath from the park is that it's almost like it never existed. People are unaware of it. There is even this one guy in the on the subway who was kind of saying, I remember you, I believe you, but he was gave out these kind of appearance of being crazy. So that doesn't bring a lot of confidence. Not really. And so from this standpoint, right? He really feels defeated because, well, he lost his tenure as a professor, which, if you know anything about academia in, you know, professors in universities or colleges, tenure is like that milestone that everybody wants to get, and he lost it. So he paid a very heavy price. Now I'm not going to ramble on and on and on about this, but all in all, and actually I kind of saw this behind. Well, it was a deleted scene of the movie, where they have this meeting. InGen, the corporation, they have this meeting, and the the I mean, he's really like an attorney for the CEO, which would be the millionaire, but he is also the millionaire's nephew. And what he basically convinced everybody to do was kind of vote the millionaire out so that he doesn't have any more to say on the corporation. I mean, he still gets the money, he still gets the benefits of being a CEO, but he no longer has to say. They strip the power away from him. And that's what happens. That's what happened. Uh, the power was stripped away from the millionaire, and the millionaire knew that something was happening. So when he calls Ian Malcolm, he had already called others to kind of go to this other island, what they refer to as Site B. And so apparently Isla Nubar was not the original place. It wasn't the place of origin for the dinosaurs. It was more of a tourist attraction. The Site B, that's where they had genetically modified and created the dinosaurs. And once they were ready, they would bring them over to Isla Nubar for the attraction. And everything was going on well. That was more for appearances so that people can go ooh ah and all this. But really, all the magic had been happening over at this outer sister island known as Isla Sorna. Now, to be frank, there is a scene where they show more or less the location. I can't tell if it's a real location or not. I didn't look it up. But think of it as it being a few hours away from the coast of San Diego. That's kind of like more or less geographically speaking where we're talking. Now, as Ian Malcolm did point out when he was called in by a millionaire who was who was recruiting him for a second visit to this other island, Dr. Malcolm did point out, hey, you're making new mistakes. I mean, sure, the mission is different because they are documenting, but still, they're still making the same mistakes, sending people to an island, to dinosaurs who are wild creatures, who are overflowing this island. Why? Because apparently a hurricane kind of destroyed the facilities, and all the creatures were let loose, all the dinosaurs, and they survived on their own. And here's the thing, it's now wild. It's no longer a controlled habitat. It's wild. And so when Ian Malcolm goes over, and of course you have this kind of side story with his daughter, who is, well, he's separated from the mother, and so she kind of is a stowaway when he goes to the island. So she also is in the island, and there's kind of like a back and forth between them because father daughter, you can't tell me what to do. Well, I can, but I don't want to, and it's a back and forth type of thing. So what is important is that when they reach the island and when they're in the island, it's different. when you had Isla Nubar, you had facilities, and it was a habitat made for dinosaurs, and they were in control of the facilities, quote unquote, up to a certain extent. But now in Isla Sorna, it's wild. It belongs to the dinosaurs. Now they are the visitors. Now they are the guests in this dinosaur habitat. It no longer belongs to them. And so, as they are trying to document, um, while making a documentary, they also realize that they're not alone. So, InGen had apparently sent another team to kind of capture the dinosaurs for the new attraction, but this time the attraction was not going to be on the island. This time the attraction is going to be in San Diego, on the actual land, or mainland, how they call it. And so I'll probably edit that out, but the microphone fell down. So, where I'm going with this is that they tried to sabotage the other team because they're capturing dinosaurs and they're trying to do their thing, and that's not going to do. Well, it also doesn't work because when they tried sabotaging, yes, they liberate the dinosaurs, but they are also caught by the team sent by InGen. This causes kind of this, conflict because now they have to capture the dinosaurs. And now they still get a hold of the dinosaurs, and most importantly, they got a hold of the mighty T-Rex. Now, why do I say mighty T-Rex? Well, here's the thing. One of the characters there, the hunter that was called in, well, he has a weird fascination for what is wild, because he, they make it known from the very beginning, or the very introduction of this character. He has hunted tigers, he has hunted many different things, and the T-Rex would be like the top trophy, that he can hunt anything. Well, they do catch the T-Rex and they do take him to San Diego along with other dinosaurs. And what do you know? If you couldn't guess, remember what I mentioned on the previous video, or if you didn't see it, well, in Jurassic Park, there's a pattern of good things happen, bad things follow. Then a good thing, bad thing. There's a run for your life, there's a take a breather, you're safe. Then there's another run away from your life. Well, they're safe out from the island, and they're now on land. But then the T-Rex gets loose, and there's actually a funny scene where she, I should say, because they're all female, but the T-Rex ends up at the backyard of one house, and guess what happens? Well, the dog is barking, and when the dog, well, there's a dog, right, and it's barking because of the dinosaur. When the dog looks up and sees that it's a dinosaur, he goes back to his house and says, I'm not gonna mess with that. So I thought that was kind of funny. It gives me a lot of every time I see that scene. But not to prolong this any longer, but there's a funny chase scene where the dinosaur is kind of going all over the city, and then finally they get the dinosaur to get back on ship, by using their own offspring, a baby T-Rex, if you will, as bait. And they don't hurt the T-Rex or anything. It's just they get the T-Rex to sleep, tranquilize it, send it back to Isla Sorna, leave the dinosaurs alone. Something they should have done since the very beginning. And so, great, right? That's great. Now, here's kind of my small take on the whole movie. And I'm not going to say it was a bad movie. I'm not going to even say that it was better than the first movie. Because the second movie is still enjoyable. It's just the characters themselves, there's too many this time around, right? So even though the movie is enjoyable, there is a difference, because in the first movie, you had a handful of characters on the island. You followed their survival throughout the whole ordeal, and then when they come out, you're rooting for them to survive. However, this time around, there's just too many characters. I mean, you do have the hunter, you have the millionaire's nephew who also goes on the island and you don't really particularly like. You have the whole crew. Then you have uh Vince Vaughn, who, if you know him, he's a comedian actor, and who, he does great stuff with Owen Wilson. I think that's his last name. But this time around, there's no Owen. Anyways, I mean, you have, the daughter, you have Ian Malcolm, the girlfriend, because Ian Malcolm also has a girlfriend. You also have, you have a lot of people, too many people to really keep track of. So yes, you're kind of rooting for the cause because you want the dinosaurs to be left alone. You want them to survive, but you don't really form that bond with any one of the characters because there's no longer an in-depth connection with them, because again, there's just too many to kind of keep up with. And although, you do see the same recurring characters, at least in the island segment, it's also a bittersweet because yes, you want them to succeed, but I find myself caring more about the actual dinosaurs surviving and not being messed with than the people themselves. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that good? I don't know. I mean, uh, there is a cool scene in the island where in one of the abandoned buildings, Ian Malcolm and his daughter are being chased by a group of velociraptors. And since the daughter does gymnastics, she does kind of these backflips and flips using the beams of the building to kind of get away from the raptors. That was kind of cool. But other than that, I didn't feel that close connection with any character in particular. I was more concerned about the dinosaurs. That's just my take. I don't know what you think. But all in all, does this hold up just like the first one? It does. It does because there's also important lessons about messing with the environment and you know, with the current news and current form where I'm recording, because we're talking about heat domes and then global warming and all these record summer heat that's being broken over and over again in these places that usually are not that hot this time of year. Well, um, yeah, that's kind of like my take. It does hold up. It's not as good as the first movie, but it does hold up quite a bit. What did you guys think? What did you guys think? Sorry, I think we're gonna have a glass of water after this, but yeah, that's my opinion. It is a good movie. It is enjoyable. You should watch it. Just be aware that this time around it feels more kind of like Free Willy, which you feel it's more about sending a message about the environment than the actual story. Well, then again, Jurassic Park has always been about what man manipulates, creates new problems, and what is being altered will come back and bites man back. Well, anyway, it's a good movie. That's all I have to say. Alright, so any comments, any thoughts? Down below you can leave them. And yeah, that'll be it for my part. Take care. Bye bye.